All right, I'm Jason. This is Blayne. We are here this week to talk about the Special Forces way of life, same as every week. And this week, that applies to basically two things. We're going to talk about a new Rucking, with an R, fundraiser that we have to benefit the Green Beret Foundation, who sadly, tragically, our community lost 3 in Niger yesterday from your old battalion and in 3rd Special Forces Group. And, you know, it's a bad coincidence, but it's also one of those things that it makes us even more proud to be able to give back to that community. And then we're going to take a step back and sort of describe what it is to be a Green Beret. Who becomes a Green Beret? What is the job that you do as a Green Beret? And then we'll sort of tie that in back to the purpose for supporting the Green Beret Foundation and what we do at GORUCK, which is first and foremost to honor our roots.
Yeah, so a little bit of a heavy heart today. We've been kind of finding out information as it trickles in and through some of the SF back channels about what went on in Niger yesterday. And it's a sobering reminder that all of our military and all of our armed forces, but especially the special operations community and the Green Berets that are out there in 70 plus countries at any one time, conducting missions that a lot of people don't know about at all, to include in places like Niger and Mali and all over the world, that it's never a safe job. And we lost a future Green Beret in a training accident a week and a half ago at Fort Bragg. So whether training, conducting sort of foreign internal defense, unconventional warfare, all-out combat operations, there is a risk to be run in that way of life, period. And it's just a sad and a sobering reminder as we lose a few fellow Green Berets just yesterday.
Yeah. So in the last decade, out of the 195 recognized countries, Green Berets have been deployed to 135 of them. That's a lot. These are places that you haven't heard of. This is not just Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria where sport involves AKs over there, right? These are countries where it can be even a little bit harder. So you go to Iraq, Afghanistan, you're clearly on a combat tour. Every time you go out, you got gun trucks, you got aircraft ahead or above you. You're rolling out in the dark of the night to go, doing bad things to bad people, right? By night anyway. And when you start operating in West Africa, Central Africa, I spent a little time in West Africa, and the first time I showed up there, it was kind of like the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I remembered it, right? It's as if I had kind of was transplanted to a proper war zone, but then it's not a war zone. It's difficult. It's very asymmetrical. So,
my old battalion commander, General Don Bolduc, he was quoted a couple months ago as saying that, we're not at war in West Africa, but our allies are. So, I don't know, the old transitive property of mathematics, right? If we're working closely, advising and assisting our allies, and they are at war with AQIM or Boko Haram or whoever the case may be, you can read between the lines. And like you said, it's one thing to roll out of the gate, armed to the teeth, ready for a fight, or at least kind of like your disposition is that you're planning on being in a fight that day, whether you are or not. And it's much more difficult when you're having to deal with the political and the diplomatic angles associated with some of these missions in Asia and Africa and those places. And you also don't have the same rules of engagement. Like the status of forces agreement is very different in some of these countries as it would be in a place like Iraq or Afghanistan, where we have more or less carte blanche to do what we need to do, certainly within the special operations community. So it's tough, and these guys are out there in soft-skinned vehicles, working very closely with locals, without the possibility of reinforcement in a lot of cases by AC-130s and all of that.
So Blayne, why are we there then? Why are we there? What's the importance?
So this, I'm not a geopolitical expert here, but I would say to tie it more to the Green Beret mission in general and the Special Forces mission, the reason that Green Berets are in places like that is because it makes a lot more sense for America to have 20 Green Berets there advising and assisting the local forces and helping them do what we would call foreign internal defense, which means you've got a sovereign nation with threats, whether internal or external, to the sovereignty of the nation and the security environment, and you send over people like Green Berets to help their police, security forces, military do what they need to do so that they can secure their own country and allow for there to be peace there. It's this whole teach them to fish versus give them a fish mentality. And I think a lot of people, even in the Q course, even that sign up wanting to be a Green Beret, they think the sole mission is to slide down ropes and shoot people. And that's just like one aspect of the Green Beret mission. And in many cases, it's not even a large aspect of it. But these types of missions where you're over there, basically creating an economy of force for the American people and for the taxpayer and for our government. It's a lot easier for us to have highly trained special operators over there doing that kind of mission than to send in a couple brigades of infantrymen to sort of secure the place. That's just not going to work, right?
It's not just relative to the military. It's also in relation to, say, the State Department and the other patriots who want to go say, send me, I'll go to these shitholes, right?
Yeah.
So you've got, diplomacy and stuff, that's great. The State Department is getting beat up these days, and that's not okay, right? I mean, we need America's best and brightest to go out there and do our work for us. And a lot of times that means diplomats meeting other diplomats from that country and all the other diplomats who are in that country.
Sure.
But Green Berets are also diplomats with guns. And so in certain parts of the world, diplomacy works great through, let me train up some of your peacekeepers and stuff so that you're able to provide stability to your country. That makes everyone's life a little bit easier. So
yeah, there's no way we can address the sort of global security situation with just sort of boots on the ground and pure like sort of kinetic military forces. It just isn't going to work that way. It's this more comprehensive approach that includes things like diplomacy. There's an economic component to it, but then even the military component doesn't have to look like tanks and gun trucks. In many, many cases, as you pointed out, in like 130 some odd countries over the last 12 or 15 years, it's been people like Green Berets training the locals, collecting intelligence, doing those kinds of things. Your friends at the State Department and also the State Department, doing all kinds of important missions to keep the world, whether it's regional or whether it's kind of global security situation, in check, because this stuff's not just happening automatically. And someone's got to be there.
I mean, so
to
look,
help us
America
out.
could say, why are they there? I mean, you can also say the question of why weren't we in Afghanistan before 9/11, right? And so you never know where the next one comes from, but it certainly behooves us as a country to send our best and brightest and our most highly trained soldiers and diplomats to these hot spots. And there's a lot of Americans out there who are willing to say, send me. And so it's really important work that we're doing. And to go back to sort of the beginning of what we're talking about here is we lost 3 Green Berets yesterday in Niger, and 2 others were wounded, evac to Landstuhl.
So wounded badly, I presume.
Yeah, wounded badly. Yeah. So, just keep them in your thoughts and prayers, their families. But, we also were just coincidentally launching a fundraiser for the Green Beret Foundation, which we've supported since the very beginning of GORUCK. We're both former Green Berets, serve on the board of the Green Beret Foundation. And so it's an honor to represent that community and to be able to give back a little bit to the community. So we need your help. And in this case, this is GORUCK. So there's a Rucking fundraiser where you get to pick your distance and you go out, and it's the honor system. This isn't the thing you want to not fulfill the honor system on, right? So you go out and you get your miles in, you do the work, and you earn your patch. So that's the fundraiser. We hope to raise a lot of money for a great cause. And yeah.
So we did one earlier this year, the Ruck Your Dog fundraiser that supported Pets for Patriots, and people really came out and supported this. And there's a no-lose situation. You donate a little bit of money to a great cause, you get out of the house, you ruck. In that case, you ruck with your dog too. And
you can ruck with your dog with this one too.
Yeah, I recommend you do if you have a dog.
I will.
Dogs like that. Yeah, but you get out, you get some miles in. It's good exercise for you. It's good for your community, and you're raising money for a great cause, which we're very happy to support. And by the way, one that is not only is it timely, but it's extremely important. These families, not just the soldiers, but the families of these soldiers and the people that love them. This is not going to be over with today or tomorrow. This is a news story that you won't hear about, in a week or less. But these families are going to be dealing with this for the rest of their lives. And so the DoD does a pretty good job of supporting folks in times like this, but this is going to be a challenge for those that were wounded and those that were KI, certainly, for their kids, for their families, and organizations like the Green Beret Foundation support those in a variety of ways. So we're really proud and happy to support them, and to the extent that you guys can sign up, earn your patch, support a good cause, we would obviously encourage you to do that.
All right, so let's take this up a notch and talk about what is Special Forces? What is a Green Beret?
Yeah, so this is a good question, certainly we're not trying to insult anyone's
intelligence. It's a planned
intelligence.
question.
Yeah.
I will say that it's a planned question.
Yeah, so there's probably a lot of people that are watching or listening that know this already, but there are a lot who either they don't or they don't completely, because the term Special Forces just gets thrown around all over the place. So anyone who's in the special operations community basically is going to be labeled as Special Forces at some point by some media outlet or politician or celebrity or somebody,
or the
right?
president sometimes.
Or the president maybe at times. Even like foreign, like whenever the special operations component of some other government or country does something, it's always the Special Forces, and that's cool. But in the United States, within the United States military, the term Special Forces is referring to something actually very, very specific, which means U.S. Army Special Forces Command, which is the Green Berets. Not necessarily the Navy SEALs or the Army Rangers or some of these Tier 1 units like Delta Force or others. It means U.S. Army Special Forces, and the mission of the Green Berets is a very broad one, but it refers to a pretty narrow list of people, right?
Yeah.
So maybe talk a little bit about the breadth, though, how broad the mission is for the Green Berets versus maybe some of the other special operations units.
Green Berets are uniquely trained within the special operations community in unconventional warfare. And so I'll give you an example because I like stories instead of just textbook definitions, which is, okay, so it's right after 9/11 and you have to figure out, you're the president, you're the Secretary of Defense, you have to figure out a way to answer what happened to us on 9/11. So you have a lot of options. You can send in, brigades after brigades into Afghanistan and do what the Soviets did in there, which, by the way, became the boneyard of the Soviet Empire. And so more helicopters, more assaulters, stuff like that, which it didn't work. So instead, what the mission that got approved was you send in a couple hundred Green Berets, right? And those Green Berets work by, with, and through a local partner force. So in this case, it was the Northern Alliance. And you link up with them and you figure out a way to get them to help you achieve your mission success. In this case, it was overthrow the Taliban and appoint a new president of Afghanistan, which, by the way, our guys in our regiment, our community, did in about 2 months. So in the boneyard of the Soviet Empire, you've got 200-something Green Berets rolling in, figuring out how to charm the snake, right? You don't kill the snake because there's always more, multi-headed hydra, there's always more snakes. Yeah. So you've got to roll in and charm the snake. And then you get that snake to go out and get the other bad snakes for you. And so, that's a way to run wartime operations. It's also a way to sort of run a business. I know, because that's how we've done it at GORUCK since forever. You bring people in and you train them up and you treat them as equals and you go by, with, and through them, and you're out there with them doing the work. So in the breadth of that mission set, you have to do everything that you require of them, right? So if it's direct action, aka kicking doors in, then you're right there as well. If it's long range reconnaissance, you have to go do that as well. If it's all the other missions. So a lot of times you end up in a village with people and you have your medic there and you've got a local villager whose daughter is seeing a doctor for the first time, and that type of goodwill goes a long way. So ultimately, Green Berets are really, really highly trained, and with that level of training comes the confidence to know when not to shoot, and that's a really, really important distinction in that lethal force is the last resort. I mean, when it's time for that, then it's time for that, but it doesn't work, right? As a strategic plan, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, you can't sort of kill your way to success in in any sort of military operation, or certainly not any sort of political or diplomatic operation. You've got to figure out a way to get these folks to provide some security for their own situation. And as you said, there's a time for it. I mean, you spend a lot of time at the range, you spend a lot of time on tactics, you spend a lot of time on airstrikes and all those kinds of things, because you have to have the capability to do that when needed. But unlike maybe some other units within special operations, Green Berets have to be prepared to spend a good chunk of their time on things like running a medical clinic, teaching local partner forces marksmanship, doing intel collection and distribution. I mean, there's a broad range.
Teaching
of
them
things.
how to do that.
Yeah,
too.
teaching them how to do it. Because at the end, almost every mission I ever wrote up when I was on a team as a commander, whether it was kind of true or not, basically said, my ODA advises and assists the local force, whatever they were named at the time,
to some degree,
to do something.
You do.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it was a bit of a farce, but other times that's exactly what you had to do. And the idea is that over the course of the conflict, maybe the Green Berets are doing a little bit more of the shooting and action at the front end in order to secure kind of, the security situation.
I see what you mean.
And then you train them up, and as over time you build your partner force, you build their capabilities, and then, it's less and less Green Berets doing it, and more them doing it. That's sort of textbut how it works. It doesn't always work that way, but that's the idea,
because
right?
your life is dependent upon the success of that mission. So you're not going to send the lambs into the slaughter, right? You've got to make sure, to take care of them and your teammates at the same time. So,
sure, I mean, there's a level of sort of training and capability that's got to be there, and then you've got to instill a level of trust and confidence in them, so that they can go out and start taking on a greater and greater share of the sort of the actual military or security operations. I mean, I tell people all the time that I was at a place one time in Afghanistan where we were 90 kilometers from the nearest friendly unit, and there wasn't really a road to get to where we were. And there was, maybe there were 12 or 13 guys on my team, a handful of other Americans. I mean, there were not a lot of us there, and if we had tried to do anything all on our own, we wouldn't have made it 48 hours. I mean, we would have been executing the escape and evasion plan pretty immediately, but we had about 90 Afghan security guards that basically protected us. And we never could have done it without them. We wouldn't have been able to sleep at night. We would not have been able to conduct training operations or anything. And our success, really our life, depended upon our ability to maintain a good relationship with them, because basically if they got a better deal, at night,
or they didn't like you.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you pissed them off.
At night in the guard tower, they could just take their guns from pointing out. They could just turn them all and point in, and by sunrise, we're screwed. I mean, that's a real scenario.
Or whenever they start squeezing triggers.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I can spend as much time in the gym or at the range as I want, and I can go in there with, all of my money and the United States military behind me and pretend to be a badass. But at the end of the day, if I don't learn how to make friends and establish trust with them, whether I like them or not, or fully trust them or not, by the way, you've got to be able to make that happen. And that's a unique skill set that, I guess others within the military have developed over the last decade or so out of necessity, but that is really the bread and butter of the Green Beret mission. And I think that's why we see so many do well in their life outside the military, because you're not just this barrel-chested freedom fighter with bulging veins in your forehead that can smash things. You're someone who can come into a room of people that might not like or trust you at all, and over time learn to work well with them, and that's a pretty useful skill set.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the training that we went through, that guys have gone through and will continue to go through, and what it takes to sort of make a Green Beret.
Yeah, so to take it back a step, and we might have talked about this last week, but I think the first step to being successful in training is understanding what we just talked about. So I knew a lot of guys that went to selection or thought they were getting into the special forces just to sort of have big pecs and smash things. And that is just not what it is. And I feel like over the course of the training, which is very long, it's almost 2 years for most people, depending on what their specialty is, there are just going to be these moments where it's hard and it's long and it just doesn't feel like it's worth it if you don't have this really kind of burning desire to do the actual mission. You really need to educate yourself on what the work really is. And then if you want very badly to do that, no problem. You'll get through the training fine. And so I think that's kind of step one to being successful. But the point is, you go through a selection process just to kind of earn the right to start the actual training. And then from there are several sort of components to the training, right?
I mean, yeah, so training being I always heard that before I was in the military. It's not like once you start the training, you're just at school where you're Johnny and they won't kick you out, right? I mean, I go to school at wherever, I'm in training, or I'm going to this school or that. It's not like that. When you're in that pipeline, if you can get out for peers, you can get out for poor performance. I mean, you're always kind of in the pressure cooker of that training environment. Mm-hmm. So it all starts though for us, and similarly at a lot of selections, similar to Special Forces Assessment selection with Rucking. And so SFAS, or selection as it's typically referred to as, you're alone, and if you're me, you're very much afraid in the middle of the night in the backwoods of North Carolina, and you've got a 45-pound rucksack dry, so you've got water and an MRE or something, I can't remember, and you're
like 4 liters of water though.
Yeah, you got a lot of water. It doesn't weigh nothing. Yeah. And you're moving through the pine forests of North Carolina that just never ever end, right from point to point, and you do those types of iterations for 4 points in 10 hours or 10 and a half hours, something like that, and you got to get all your points, and you got to keep doing that again and again and again.
Yeah, and I think so. Look, we're not here to give you like the intimate details of the training, because we couldn't do that anyway. But I think the point you're trying to make, I think the point I'll try to make here is that it is certainly a marathon and not a sprint. And so the idea that you can be motivated for a short period of time and sort of sprint your way to the finish, or kind of muscle through some of this, it's just the nature of the training more than like the specific components of it, right? Because there's selection, and there's like some patrolling and tactics, and then you learn your specific MOS and all that. That's great. But the biggest, kind of aspect of it is you've got to be willing and able to endure for a long period of time. This is why rucking is so fundamental to it. It's why it's the foundation of Special Forces training, is because you've got to have the ability to show up day after day for weeks and months at a time and keep putting one foot in front of the other, even when it's hard and it sucks, because you've got kind of that goal in mind and you're going to stick with it. It is not a short course. It's not 60 days like Ranger School, which is a tough course in and of itself, but you just can't sort of gut it out and muscle your way through it. It just will not work. It's, might be a couple of years, and that's, maybe every day is not the hardest day ever, but it's a lot of days.
Yeah.
And they really add up on top of each other. So you've got to have that foundation laid of physical and mental toughness to get through it.
Yeah, so we probably came by our focus on rucking, honestly, because it's what we know, it's what we did. And throughout the course of the Q course, I just grew accustomed to having a lot of weight on my back. At times too much, a lot more weight than I would recommend now. And before I joined the Army, I thought you needed to run and lift weights and get pretty muscles from the gym and stuff like that.
We're still trying to meet girls. So there are other motivations besides. Let's not pretend here.
Yeah, well, that's a fact. And then joining the Army, it sort of, I got introduced to rucking, and then I really got introduced to rucking in the Q course at selection, and it just sort of never stopped. And so if movement is kind of the foundation of a healthy life, right? Get out and move. It's pretty simple. Yeah. Within the Q course, they just load you down with a lot more weight and say move from point to point to point to point. And the first goal at selection is for you to prove that you can operate as an individual, that you have the intestinal fortitude, as they typically call it, to just conquer whatever it is alone and afraid, as I was again, and get your points and get there. Don't be late, light, or last, right? And so once you do that and they don't hate you because there's peers and stuff, because there's a team week at the end, then you start graduating to unit tactics, small unit tactics. And so the foundation of sort of wartime movements, you have things with you like bullets. They weigh real pounds that you have to carry. So there are times in modern warfare where you have gun trucks that does a lot of the work for you. But in this case, the foundational movement was, the Q course being taught in sort of a Vietnam era setting. I mean, you're learning things like the wedge, how to move in the wedge, and your Bravo right rifle sometimes, and your point other times, and you've always got a lot of weight on your back. And so you just get accustomed to that. And for me personally, I lost a lot of weight. I lost a lot of muscle bulk, but gained a lot of performance of those muscles, and was able to kind of focus more on endurance and on strength at the same time.
Yeah, so I like what you said earlier about like how movement is sort of the foundation, because this is something that I've learned to be true the hard way, I'm sure like you, is that I think for most of us, and a lot of us that are training for things especially, we really feel like our training, like the intense portion of our exercise, or like the sport specific portion of our exercise, is what we need and is the most important thing. And so what we do, a lot of us, not all of us, but what a lot of us do is we get up in the morning, we go to work, like we sit in our car in our commute or whatever, and then we sit, most of us sit for the majority of our day at work at a computer, kind of doing this. And then even those of us that are the most dedicated, we leave work at 5 or 5:30 and we go to the gym. You go to the gym and lift weights, you go to CrossFit, or you go to the running club or whatever, and then you really get after it for like an hour. Mm-hmm. And then you're exhausted, you put in a good workout, which is great, and then you go home and maybe have some dinner, you watch some Netflix, and you go to bed. So out of the 24 hours in the day, you were active maybe for one of them, which is certainly better than nothing, but it's not really a model for sort of long-term health and success and performance even. What most people need is a lot more movement. They need a much bigger volume of movement, more walking, more rucking, more sort of lower intensity
stairs type stuff.
Yeah, like we all just need to be moving a lot more. And rucking is great because now you're moving with a little bit of a load, so you're actually building a bit of strength, and right, it's good for your endurance. And we probably, for most people, especially those of you out there that are really training, you got to be careful, because if you're doing 6 hours of training a week and it's all really intense 1 hour blocks, now you're not only are you not doing enough kind of volume of movement and building a big enough base, but you're making yourself more susceptible to injury, because you've got sort of this, you're sedentary for 23 hours and then you're really getting after it for 1 hour. So there are ways around this, and we don't need to dive into it all right now, but I guess the seed I guess we'd like to plant is that we would encourage everybody to figure out a way to move a lot more, and maybe you only need 3 hours a week of really intense, focused, intentional training. But most of us, myself included, although I'm getting much better at it now that I live in Jack's Beach and I walk and ride my bike everywhere, need a higher volume of just kind of low to moderate intensity movement. And so that's kind of what we're working on now, I guess.
So it's a bit of optimization of our time in our lives. I mean, what's the point, right? What's the point of working out? What's the point of training? What's the point of moving? What's the point of living, I guess, right? I mean, so ultimately we want to be happy. And so, you've got SF guys that are operating at this really, really high level because that's their job. Mm-hmm. And it is a contact sport. And, we do lose brothers from our community too often, and that will continue. It's just a fact. And so, when we start to think about what it means to perform at that level, I'm not at that level. You're not at that level. When you were on a team, you were. When I was on a team, I was. But life can kind of round out in other ways. So this is not a way to say, hey, we're going to make you into a Green Beret. It's just to say, look, there are lessons in what it means to be at a special forces performance level that involve a lot of movement. And rucking is certainly the foundation of that.
Yeah, because here's the thing, the goal, at least for me, everyone can have their own kind of priorities, I suppose, but the goal for me is to be healthy and to be strong and to be fit for my life. Mm-hmm. I have 3 kids, I have a lot of interests, like a wide range of things, whether it's surfing or mountain biking or whatever. And so, do I spend some time in the gym? Yeah, I like the gym. I like to train, I like to work out. I'm a member at the CrossFit gym here across the street. That's all great, but I do all of it so that I can be better at life, and so that I can be strong and fit and have great endurance, throughout all the other things that I want to do. And so that's this kind of idea of you build this big base of, whether it's rucking or whatever the case may be, that's going to help you prevent injury and to kind of have the strength and endurance to do some of these other things.
So for me, very practically, time is really short You know,
Are you busy?
Time is really short, and you know, I try to optimize my time. I got 3 kids too, and I don't make a lot of time for individual kind of, hey, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to go, you know, I just don't, right? But what I do like to do is to optimize the time that I have. So for instance, I wake up in the morning, I got Monster. Yeah, do we love Monster? Do we love Monster? Yes, we love Monster. So I got Monster, and Monster has to do things like go for a walk and do his business, right? So I also am responsible for early morning kid wake up. So I got Ryan, get him up, and you know, he's always happy to see me. He's a daddy's boy right now. It's great. It ebbs and flows with kids, you know, and he's a daddy's boy. It's great. So we go downstairs, coffee. I put Ryan in the front loader. Monster's got to go out, so I grab the leash. Then, oh yeah, I got my rucksack right by the door on the way out. And so I've got 30 pounds in my ruck. I've got Ryan on my front. That's about 20. So for me, it's about 50. It's a short walk in the morning, but it's probably 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, right? It could be 5 some days. It could be 30 some days. Depends on what time Ryan wakes up.
The disposition of the kid and the dog.
Because sometimes Ryan wakes up really early, and this goes a little bit longer. And that just is what it is. And so, but for me, we in life, and I've certainly been guilty of this as well, we don't give ourselves credit for the little things. We give ourselves credit for the, oh, I did this, I went to CrossFit today. That's a thing. I completed this horrific and awful workout, and I puked at the end, and that's awesome, right? I really treated my body like that, like I hate it today, and I feel good about it, right? But over time, what I've started to see anyway, is that over the course of months and years, is that if you add up all of those hours of optimizing the time that you have with 20, 30, whatever pounds on your back, and if you don't have Ryan or someone like that, then you don't have to have anyone in the front loader, right? But I got Monster, and Monster gets exercise, I get exercise, and I'm sort of moving. So as we transition to kind of what we're talking about now, at least in part, is the Rucking fundraiser for the Green Beret Foundation. You know, there's lots of ways to get miles in. It's not just, you don't have to do this at the expense of the gym time, which is great. I like a good chest thrasher workout too, right? Stuff like that. So you can get this throughout your daily life, and you can also serve a great cause.
Yeah, so I mean that 10-minute walk that you normally do in the morning, if you just woke up a little earlier, you could make it a 30-minute walk, and boom.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
And when you get used to a little bit more weight, you get to optimize your time just a little bit more. I mean, I wouldn't start out 50 pounds is about my max. I mean, we both legitimately carried 120 plus.
Maybe. Everyone says they carried a 100-pound rucksack, though, by the way. I never met anyone in the military that didn't carry a 100-pound rucksack.
Yeah, well, that's true.
I'm not sure how many, but yeah.
I mean, the Robin Sage infill, though, was
shitty.
It was
I landed in the trees.
So the Robin Sage infill is the final, it's a war game that you play as the final exercise in your Special Forces qualification course. It sort of puts it all together. You link up with, a guerrilla chief and all this stuff, and it's a testament to the commitment of our community to build great Green Berets that this awesome experience happens. And you take a step back, and there's locals involved, there's all sorts of stuff, but the infiltration to get there for me, I landed really hard. So you jump in, and I had, okay, shocker here, I had, 125 pounds dangling between my legs, right? I mean, landed like a sack of shit. I mean, I just remember being on the airstrip where we landed and feeling my legs and saying, thank God I'm still alive, let alone have both my legs still functioning. So anyway, back to the Rucking fundraiser for the Green Beret Foundation. There's lots of ways to get miles, optimize your time. And want to take a couple questions?
Bomber, do we have questions coming in?
We have a few of them.
We're all over the place, so we need the
are
audience.
All over the place. We need your focus.
We need the audience to bring us back online. So maybe some questions. How are we doing?
Shredder says, "What's up?"
What up?
Cadre Michael Shredder says, "What's up?" That's a good dude. Do an event with him sometime.
Yes. Randy Palmero wanted to know if you were out of Stuttgart, Jason.
Randy wants to know if I was in Stuttgart, Germany. So I did a upsell mission in Stuttgart. I was based at Fort Carson, Intense Special Forces Group, and then they have a forward battalion in Stuttgart that does things like, in theory, if an embassy goes down, you have, or gets under attack, you've got a forward operating base full of Green Berets that can respond. It's part of the commanders and extremist force and stuff like that. So I did a brief few months in Stuttgart there, but most of my time was at Carson, and actually most of my time at Carson was not at Carson. It was in the sandbox or in Africa.
What else, Bomber?
Let's see. Thoughts on SFAD replacing / backfilling SOF FID missions?
I don't know. That's,
lots of acronyms.
There are too many acronyms in the question.
Too many acronyms in the question to be read.
And I guess, to be honest, the question was something about how we felt about a certain subset of units replacing another subset of units to do a certain mission. And I mean, just to be completely transparent, I am not an expert on defense policy at the moment, so I probably would be smart not to weigh in on some of this stuff.
Yeah, too many acronyms for me.
Yeah. What else, Palmer? Do you have something with fewer acronyms that we could get after?
What's your favorite mission or place to visit?
Wow,
Wait,
those are two different questions.
What's your favorite mission or place to visit?
Okay, so that's a loaded question, but I'll give an unconventional answer because I'm an unconventional guy. The most surprising place that I ever visited that I had to go with my team to was Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So I'll set it up.
All right, let's hear it.
We'd been like any good team, we were off to train, off to do this, off to do that. Like very seldom were we home for an extended period of time. We're always going to do something. And we had just been in Northern Virginia training one of our kind of partner agency forces for like 6 or 7 weeks or something. So it was a good chunk of time away from home, stateside, but still away from home, doing this training mission. And it was pretty intense. We were in charge of running all the training. So we were pretty smoked when we got home. And after about 2 days of being home, they said, you guys are going for a week to do a static demo, which is like a static display demo means you set up a few tables and you stand there behind the table with all your guns and like boats and stuff.
You demo them, looking like you, which is
and you
awesome.
wear your Green Beret, like you stand there so the public can go by and be like, oh, what's this radio? What's this gun? And like, it's not a good time. Nobody really likes doing that.
They don't let you drink beer while you're doing it.
No, it's a crappy.
It's not fun.
It's a crappy mission. And so they said, hey, you guys are going to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania to do a mod demo. And I was like, we're not going. That was my response. I told my company commander, I was like, no, we're not going. And he said, yes, you are. You're going. You have no choice in the matter. And so right after we got home from this longer mission, we got sent for a week to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which I had never heard of. I didn't even really know where it was. And I was not stoked about going there. And we showed up, and it was for the Special Forces Association convention. Just happened to be there. And so we stayed at this hotel right downtown, which Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, as it turns out, is a great little town in central Pennsylvania, right on the river. And we stayed at this cool hotel, and we had to do our display right on the apron of the hotel. And the Special Forces Association guys, like all the old school, like the OG SF guys, they were thrilled to have us in town, like the young guys. And like I won't go any further in detail, but because to protect the guilty.
Yes, protect the guilty.
But I could not believe what a good time it was, and like how much the older guys embraced us younger guys, and the people from the community that came out to like see us and meet us. We took a million pictures with people. The SF Association convention was awesome, and like we were really treated like royalty. The local police came out, and like because we stored all of our stuff in their arms room. Like too many stories that I can't tell, but maybe that sounds lame because it's not exotic. But that was the place I was least excited to ever go to as a team leader, and most significantly overshot my expectations. So check out Harrisburg, Pennsylvania if you haven't been there.
So you and the fam are gonna vacation summer there?
No, I can't go there with my family. Like this, it was a totally different scenario, but very cool.
I had a similar experience with a country called Mauritania in West Africa, which I had no idea where it was until they said, hey, you're going to go to Mauritania, right? And everybody, this is when I was actually working out of Stuttgart, Germany. And they sort of said, oh, that's a terrible country. You drew the short straw, man. This is going to be terrible, right? And so there's also this other guiding principle in the Army that the farther away you are from the flagpole, the more the better it is for you. The more
Because
fun
SF
you're
guys
gonna
will figure out a way to have fun. Like
Yeah,
I don't need to
so-
be in New York City to have fun with
No,
my team. Like,
no.
we'll figure it out.
No, so it was, 12 of us. We went down with a bunch of pickup trucks, and, they fund you pretty well when you go on a trip. So we were training up their troops sort of 4 days a week. They didn't want to work more, so we didn't do more.
Okay.
And the rest of the day, and it got too hot after noon, like the hour of noon. So we worked from like 7 until realistically 11, 4 days a week, because they wanted Friday off, So then it turned into, but we're there, we work for them, essentially, buy with them through, but we work for them. And so in the afternoons, it was just total team stuff, right? I mean, guns and bombs and sniper rifles and full kind of training, which, yes, you get to do that when you're at your home base, but there's lots of red tape. There's lots of logistics, and there's lots of teams, so everyone's fighting over the ranges and what's the schedule. And the entire area where we were, it was all arranged. There's just a big giant, mountain over there. You just shoot into it. It's easy, right? So everything that goes boom, you get to practice with. It was fantastic. And then, come Thursday at noon, we were basically done until Monday at 7. And so we would take our couple pickup trucks and go all over the country. And there's a lot of interesting things that go on there. I'm going to also protect the guilty now, including myself, and just say it was awesome. Like all of the best parts of. We had sort of earned it too. We'd come back from a combat tour, and then we all went to West Africa. So we were really tight. I mean, really tight. And that's time that I cherish, because I don't get to see those guys as much as I wish anymore. And those are really, really sacred memories for me. But bottom line is that you can be in the middle of hell. If you're there with the right people, you can figure out a way to have fun. So the Army will graciously send you to a lot of places that remind you of what you think hell should look like. And it's up to you to make the best out of it. And that's sort of true in life in general as well.
Yeah, I mean, in all my time in the Army, I was stationed at Fort Knox, Fort Hood, Fort Benning, and Fort Bragg. So all the finest places, And I had a great time at every single one of them. So it's about the people you're with and the attitude you have while you're there. Easy.
Yep.
No struggle whatsoever. Bomber, we can do one more for sure.
Okay, this is it. Who is the bigger history buff between the two of you?
Jason.
No. You're an officer, Blayne. Didn't you study all that stuff, all those books and stuff?
Yeah, but I didn't like it because I was in college, so I rejected it. Like my sole point in military history was to figure out a way to get at least to be on the test and then move on. I wasn't reading it because I enjoyed it, because I was told to.
I think we're pretty similar. I mean, we like to get out and thrash our bodies a little bit, read books at night, drink a couple beers with buddies on the weekends and on the weekdays. Cheers. And
Thursdays.
on a Thursday, on a Monday, Tuesday,
No comment. Bomber, what else?
Let's see. When training indigenous forces, do you put them through a boot camp or just a ruck?
Repeat the question.
So Bomber asked, when training indigenous forces, do you put them through a boot camp or just a ruck? It's more complex. So it really depends on a couple things. One, it depends on what they want. So as Jason kind of alluded to, in many cases you sort of work for them. So depending on the mission, you're going to have to provide them to some degree what they want. The other big factor is what they need. So you can assess them and see sort of what their level of proficiency is and what the mission looks like, and then you're going to give them a course of training, whether it's in marksmanship, basic tactics, whatever the case may be. What I've found is that the local partner force most often wants to do really cool stuff, but they're not really ready for it. So they want to do fast roping and super cool guy stuff before their shot groups are tight and they have basic sort of tactics. So that's another kind of expectation management you've got to do, is that, hey, we've got to get you politely to a level where you're not going to shoot your buddy or do something stupid before we can start assaulting buildings and jumping off the backs of trucks and doing cool stuff.
This is kind of, I don't know that I don't know that people want to hear this, but Special Forces is not all about how to run super fast and shoot underneath your left thigh while you're on the move and shooting from helicopters at bad guys and all that stuff. It's really just you are masters of the fundamentals. and the fundamentals of shoot, move, communicate. And once you can do that, you can sort of branch out from that. And so, with partner forces, it's tricky. I mean, there's nothing like a boot camp that I saw, because
they wouldn't do it.
They won't do it, and it's not going to build any rapport. So you have to always be building rapport. And so for us, when we were training up our forces, it was just focus on the fundamentals. Like, it's a flat range where you start out, and then you teach them the fundamentals of marksmanship, and then you start introducing movement into marksmanship, and then you start introducing houses into, CQB, close quarters battle, into how you're training them up. And it's just a progression. There's no way around the fact that you have to master the fundamentals if you want to be an expert. And so that's one of the great lessons that I learned from Special Forces, though, is it's not, you don't just build Jason Bourne overnight.
No, or ever, by the way.
Or ever, by the way.
Because we used to say on my team that you're never too cool to low crawl. Because if you're getting shot at, those bullets don't care that you're a Green Beret. Like, they'll go right through your nugget just like anybody else's. So you have to low crawl. You have to apply the fundamentals consistently, and that's what's going to ultimately help you or hurt you. So anytime you feel like you're too cool, like, well, I'm a Green Beret now, so I can just shoot from the hip, you're wrong. We spent hours and hours and hours at the 3-meter line, at the 5-meter line, at the 7-meter line, not doing anything cool other than honing in our skills at the basics.
I mean, it's cool winning.
What's cool is not losing in some
not
cases.
losing, not dying. That's cool. Your team beating them, and that you don't really do that with heroic tactics most of the time, right?
No, it's
the fundamentals.
Anybody at any elite level, though, would say the same thing, right? I mean, whether you're an NFL team or a special operations unit, the ones that are really successful are the ones that are disciplined, cohesive, and consistently exceed at the fundamentals.
I mean, occasionally you get the sort of Doug Flutie Hail Mary at the end of the game, and you talk about that for a really long time, because
those are the exceptional things that get talked about a lot.
It's a great play, but there's a billion plays that go on, and that's one, and it's a bit of a fluke. So sometimes there's good flukes, and sometimes there's bad flukes, right? And we've lived through both of them, and the good ones are good, and the bad ones are really bad. But ultimately, the fundamentals are the process. So, in training up a partner force, it's really just you're teaching them the fundamentals and stuff. So I think we're do a final wrap on.
Sure.
Final wrap on. So glad to be back talking about the Rucking fundraiser for the Green Beret Foundation. We unfortunately lost we lost a few Green Berets, a couple more injured. And so the timing is unfortunate, but also timely, where GORUCK is launching a fundraiser for the Green Beret Foundation. So pick your distance, do the work, and you'll get to earn a really cool patch. And basically all the proceeds, everything goes to the Green Beret Foundation, who we're really, really happy to support since forever.
Where can people find out about it or check
So
it out?
it's on our site. It's goruck.com/GBF, but there'll be a little banner. It'll be on the homepage, and maybe even under the events drop down on the GORUCK site. So
I'll add a link here.
Yeah, there's a link in the Facebook Live, and we'll spread it to the winds.
So this is the second week in a row we've done this. I think we decided before we went live that we're going to do this every week on Thursday, right?
We are going to do this every week on Thursday. Sometimes I have a feeling one of us might be gone, and that'll be if you're gone, I will suffer. I will suffer through. It'll be a huge thing to carry. If I'm gone, the show will go better for you. But we'll make it work. And occasionally, I think we'll introduce some guests or something like that. Insofar as they're as interesting as we are, right?
Yeah, but we enjoy doing this, and I think we're never short on things for us to chat about. So Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Eastern is what we're going to shoot for. It'll be Jason and I. Maybe we'll have some guests from time to time, but and we'll also get this over onto YouTube in the day or so after. So there'll be a Facebook Live, and then probably a slightly more, I guess, pretty version.
It'll be a
YouTube.
pretty version.
If you didn't catch the live, no sweat.
Yeah.
Go over to YouTube and it will be right there for you.
So basically how this works is we've got a cell phone, it's mine this time, that's running the Facebook Live. And then there's another camera that's right up there that's capturing the audio through the mics here. And it optimizes rather our time. Sort of like what Rucking does, Sort of optimizes your time, getting your miles in. Well, this optimizes our time for getting the message out, which in this case we care really, really deeply about. So trying to raise some money and some awareness for the Green Beret Foundation and promoting a healthy lifestyle of getting out there and whooping it on.
Yeah, so every Thursday, 2 Green Berets, Budweiser,
Special
life.
Forces way of life, stuff like that.
Life, Rucking, business, winning.
Something like that, yeah.
All right, we'll work on the tagline. You send in suggestions, but we'll look forward to seeing you guys next week.